This is the Torid-Pulse. This little how-to video, I'll demonstrate how to operate this device, how to adjust the air nozzle, how to hook it and unhook it, and how to clean it after you're finished diving. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. The first thing we're going to talk about in this video is how to properly hold the device in your hand. You want 2 fingers below the divider and 2 fingers actually on the trigger. When you pull the trigger, you want to pull the trigger quickly and let go. You don't want to pull the trigger and hold it because you're losing air the whole time. So just pull the trigger quickly, and that helps the rings fire faster. Also, when you're done, let go of it. Another safety precaution we want to talk about is never put your fingers inside the nozzle of the device. Even on land, like now, we don't want to get into bad habits, just like paintball safety and with BB guns. You don't want to do things that are stupid and silly. So when you're underwater, it's second nature not to do that. It could be a safety issue with hurting yourself or hurting somebody else. So never do that. Also, when you're shooting the gun, you never want to put your hand underneath it, partly because your fingers might wind up inside by accident. And also, when you're holding it this way, it does not allow the water to flow quickly into the nozzle and to the forward area of the gun. So never hold it like this, always hold it like this or like this. It's also very important while you're diving and playing with the Torid-Pulse, if you're sharing your air supply, your main scuba tank, with the Torid-Pulse, you always want to often check your pressure gauge to see how much air you have left in your tank. When you're playing and shooting and having a lot of fun, if you tend to do a lot of shots quickly, you use up a lot more air. So the device is really fun to play in, say, 10, 20, 30 feet of water and have some fun paintball-style games. Have I mentioned to check your air supply often? To adjust the air inside the Torid-Pulse, there's a knob at the very top. All this does is adjust how much air goes into the rings shooting forward. It doesn't make them go faster or slower per se. To get finer and smaller rings, dial the knob to the right and down and backwards, and that'll make the rings relatively thin, if not invisible. If you want to make much larger rings, dial the knob all the way forward, and that'll be too much, but what will happen is the rings will be so big they'll turn into foam, and you'll see that also if it's too far. What you generally want to do is do somewhere in the middle at about the 2 o'clock position, and that'll give the rings that are just about correct. You can feel it. If they're too big, you can dial it down. If they're too small, dial it forward until you get it just right. Also, an interesting technique and phenomenon I've discovered with this device is that if you're aiming down, if for example you're on the surface and you're aiming down to the depths, you want to give slightly more air to the rings because it takes more air to get down for the device. It's something to do with the physics. If you're on the bottom shooting up, you want to dial less air, otherwise too much air comes out of the gun. Have I mentioned to check your air supply often? After diving in salt water with the Torid-Pulse, I want to talk to you about a couple techniques for cleaning out the system. So after you've been in the ocean, and you come back onto a ship or the deck of a boat or the dock, it's really great to take the device, dunk it in a tank of fresh water, pull the trigger 2 or 3 times and let the system flush out some of the salt. Then after that, unhook the hose, dunk the device back in fresh water and pull the trigger a few times. That allows the fresh water to flow through all of the system. Then take the device back up, hook it up, and while you're not in the water, dry fire it several times. What you're doing now is blowing all the water out of the system completely. Afterwards, you can just unhook it and let it air dry, and that's it. If you've been diving in fresh water, all you need to do, like for example, a pool, if you're in a pool or a fresh water or a lake, all you have to do is give it a few shots in a dry fire, hold it. I usually do it a couple different angles, and that's pretty much it. When you're done, unhook it and let it dry out. That's it. Another aspect of the Torid-Pulse operation I want to discuss is environmental awareness. It's very important that when you're playing with this device, you're not hurting the environment. You're not aiming it at kelp and plants and delicate marine life. My experience is when you aim it at fish, especially larger fish, they really don't care. They just move out of the way and that often will follow the bubble rings. But I'm very conscious of not shooting it at actual kelp plants when I'm very close or other marine life that might be affected by it. So please, be very careful with environmental awareness.